You cannot think your way out of your own head. Here's what actually works.
Here is something that should bother you more than it probably does. Every single piece of advice ever given about your mental health, every book on anxiety, every therapy session, every podcast on self-improvement, all of it assumes the same thing. It assumes that you can use your mind to fix your mind. Think better thoughts, reframe your perspective, challenge your beliefs, become more self-aware. But wait, if your thinking is the problem, how can more thinking be the solution? If you are anxious, your anxious mind is the one trying to calm itself down. If you are stuck in a destructive pattern, the same mind that created the pattern is the one trying to break free. That sounds less like therapy and more like trying to put out a fire using the fire itself. This is not a small philosophical puzzle. This is the central problem of the human condition. And the answer, when you actually find it, changes everything about how you approach your own inner life.
Part 1. Why the closed loop is real. Let's name this problem properly, because most people never do. Psychologists call it something like metacognitive entanglement. The moment when your thinking becomes the very object you are trying to think about. You cannot step outside the system to examine the system, because you are the system. It is like trying to read the back of your own head without a mirror. Ancient wisdom traditions noticed this long before modern psychology had the vocabulary. But here's what's remarkable. They did not stop at pointing out the problem. They kept going. And what they discovered was that the closed loop you feel trapped inside is actually an illusion, a very convincing one, but an illusion nonetheless. Here's why. You experience yourself as one continuous unified mind, one you that has been the same you from childhood until right now. But that is not actually how the mind works. Even neuroscience today confirms what contemplative traditions figured out thousands of years ago. Your mind is not a single thing. It is a rapid, churning sequence of different states, different qualities of attention, different emotional tones, arising one after another so fast that they blend into something that feels like a continuous stream. That distinction is not just interesting. It is the entire escape hatch from the closed loop, and we're going to get to exactly why in a moment. Part 2. The moment that changes everything. Think about the last time you caught yourself overreacting. Maybe you snapped at someone, or you spiraled into anxiety over something that turned out to be nothing. Now here is the question. Who noticed that? You did. But which you? Not the one who was overreacting. That version of you had no awareness that anything was wrong. It was another state of mind, arriving just afterward, that looked back and said, wait, that was out of proportion. That moment, that small gap where you noticed, that is everything. That gap is not the same mind that produced the reaction. It is a qualitatively different state of consciousness, one that carries clarity instead of noise. And the crucial thing to understand is that this state is not rare or special or reserved for monks and meditators. It happened to you, probably today. The problem is not that clarity is unavailable to you. The problem is that we do not know how to deliberately turn toward it. We are well trained in how to react. We are almost completely untrained in how to observe, and those are two profoundly different skills. Modern research on the brain's default mode network backs this up in a fascinating way. When the brain is at rest, not focused on any task, it defaults to self-referential thinking, ruminating, replaying, planning, worrying. The mind tells stories about itself. And here is the key finding. People with high levels of anxiety, depression, and chronic stress tend to get stuck in this default mode network, unable to shift out of it. What meditation and focused awareness do neurologically is train the brain to shift, not to empty the mind, not to stop thinking, but to shift into a different mode, a different quality of attention. The same gear shift that happened naturally when you caught yourself overreacting. Part 3. The practical mechanics. So how do you actually do this? Because if we stop at the theory, we have just given you another idea to think about, which lands us right back in the closed loop. Here is where almost everyone gets it wrong. They hear the word mindfulness and they picture sitting still, cross-legged, trying to clear their head. And when thoughts keep coming, as they always do, they feel like they are failing. But that is a fundamental misunderstanding of what the practice actually is. The practice is not the absence of thought. The practice is the noticing. Every single time a thought pulls you away and you notice that it has, that moment of noticing is the practice succeeding, not failing. You are not trying to stop the river. You are learning to stand on the bank and watch it, rather than being swept along inside it. And you do not need a meditation cushion to do this. Start with something you already do every day. The next time a strong emotion rises in you, irritation, impatience, the sudden tightening in your chest before a difficult conversation, pause. Not to analyze it, not to fix it, just to name it. Irritation is here. Anxiety is here. That single act of labeling creates a sliver of space between you and the feeling. Research by UCLA neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman found that simply labeling an emotion in words measurably reduces its intensity because it activates the prefrontal cortex and partially disengages the amygdala. You are not suppressing the emotion. You are refusing to be entirely consumed by it. There's something else that accelerates this process that almost nobody talks about, and it is not a technique at all. It is ethics. When you consistently act in ways that align with your own values, when you are honest, when you do not harm people, when you keep your promises, your mind becomes quiet in a specific way. Not because morality is a rule imposed from outside, but because inner conflict is exhausting. Every time you act against your values, you create a kind of static in the mind, a background hum of guilt or dissonance that makes clear seeing almost impossible. Clean it up, and the clarity you are looking for starts arriving on its own.
Part 4. The long game. There is one more thing, and it might be the most important thing of all, especially for anyone who has tried to change themselves and felt like they were running in place. Real inner change is not dramatic. It does not happen in a single insight or a weekend retreat or one profoundly moving conversation, as much as those things can open a door. Real change happens the way a river cuts through stone, not through force, through consistency. Through the accumulation of thousands of small, unremarkable moments where you chose to notice rather than react. Where you paused before you spoke in anger. Where you returned your attention one more time to what was actually happening. You probably will not feel it working. That is the strange and slightly frustrating truth about genuine inner development. The progress is invisible from the inside while it is happening, and then one day you realize that something that used to destroy you for a week now passes through you in an afternoon. That something that used to make you feel trapped now just feels like weather. Uncomfortable maybe, but temporary. Moving through rather than defining you. The mind is not broken. It has never been broken. It has simply been pointed outward toward everything except itself for so long that looking inward feels foreign. But the capacity for clarity was always there. It is there right now, in this moment, in the part of you that is listening and understanding and choosing what to do next. You cannot think your way out of your own head, but you can learn to watch your thinking, and that watching, patient, honest, practiced, is precisely how the head begins to heal.